behalf of the CEO of Workforce Training and Consulting, Mr. Stephen Herskovich, and the other training companies, I'd like to welcome you all here today. Workforce Training and Consulting is proud to partner with the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, the QCTO, in organizing an event that we know will be informative and add value and be useful in understanding the South African training environment. So before introducing our topic and guest speaker, and since I have the floor and the microphone, I'd like to tell you all a bit about who we are. Workforce Training and Consulting falls under Workforce Holdings. Workforce and its group of companies is a leading, trusted provider of human capital solutions. The group operates predominantly in South Africa, and we boast an expanding footprint in the Southern African region, including Mozambique, Namibia, Botswana, and Mauritius. Workforce is just over 50 years old, a BE Level 1 company, and listed on the JSE LTX. Workforce Training and Consulting is one of 5 operating segments in the group. The other 4 are staffing and outsourcing, healthcare, financial services, and recruitment. Workforce Training and Consulting is comprised of 5 companies: DYNA Training, KBC Health and Safety, Prisma Training Solutions, Training Force, and my company, Chartall Business College. All of these businesses are focused on using targeted training to improve people's employability. Our purpose is to make a meaningful and sustainable difference in people's lives. We achieve that through our core offerings, which include learnerships, apprenticeships, compliance training, contractor onboarding, community development, induction training, leadership training, supervisory training, operational risk management training, qualifications, skills programs, and short courses. All of this is achieved through accreditations with the QCTO, all the relevant CETAs, and AET. Our courses are SAQA and NQF aligned, and we're passionate about delivering quality education and empowering our students and our clients. So, why are we here today? We know that the education landscape is changing from what we used to know. Change can create uncertainty, but as your trusted partners in training, we are here to support you, to teach, to consult, and sometimes to learn lessons with you. The workforce training and consulting companies have pivoted by obtaining accreditation with the QCTO and these new qualification offerings and methodologies. We want to ensure that our clients do not get left behind and left in the lurch, but have training options. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the CEO of the QCTO, Vijen Naidu, to share the game-changing opportunities that are linked to the QCTO and hopefully to put our fears to rest. So Vijen will be speaking now until about 10:30, so we'll have an hour of presentation, and then he has agreed to take questions. So from 10:30 to 11, if you have any burning questions, now would be a great time to ask them. So after that, if you'll join us out the front for snacks, but if you do get thirsty during the presentation, there are drinks and water at the back. So Vijen, if you'll join me. Thank you.
Good morning. This morning I had 2 outfits out, one with the tie and the other one without the tie. I think I should have worn the one without the tie. Thanks, Lee, for that introduction. And thank you to Stephen, Jason, the team from Workforce Holdings. Yeah, it says it's a keynote address. You know, I get confused when it's a keynote address and it's a presentation. And then it suddenly becomes like a workshop. But whatever it is, you're going to hear what I'm going to say. I'm going to get your questions. I'll answer them as best that I can. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and we don't take these opportunities lightly, because we know we're in a transition, and normally when you get closer to that deadline, then you have a lot of questions that you need to be answered. I do have with me my colleague from the Quality Council. He's the Chief Director responsible for Occupational Quality Assurance, Mr. Imbua. You just want to greet, stand up so they can see you. And the agreement is, I do the presentation, he answers the questions. All right. Okay, I've got 1 hour. I'm going to go pretty quick through this. And then obviously it's designed so that I'm going to minimize the questions. Hopefully a number of your questions gets answered here. But I know from what I've been just checking when I've been talking to people out there at breakfast, there's a particular area that's probably going to come up that will not be in the slides, but we will then respond to that. All right, so let me just go. And you can see we call this the game changer. We allowed Workforce Holdings to also name this event the game changer, because we believe that's the theme that we want to carry through. And really, this is a game changer on a number of fronts, and you will see it as that comes through. So let me quickly, I don't know who's in the room, and it will be difficult if I have to go around and ask who's in the room, etc. But, a lot of people don't know the QCTO wherever we go. We've been around for 12 years, but certainly the traction, it's been taking some time to get to where we are. So I'll just give you a quick history of QCTO, which will also set the context of where we're going and what we're doing. So we're the Quality Council for Trades and Occupations, and established under the Skills Development Act, by the way, which is the same act that established the Sector Education and Training Authorities, the SETAs, as well as other entities such as your National Skills Authority and the like. Now, since the establishment of the QCTO in 2010, and obviously with a number of limitations, which still do exist, we have made some significant progress, and that's the progress we want to share with you today. In terms of the implementation of our OQSF, the sub-framework, you do know that in this country we have SAQA that has oversight over the National Qualifications Framework, but then there are 3 sub-frameworks that comprise that framework. The one being the General and Further Education and Training. You'll see that again just now. The other is just the Higher Education. And then the new kid on the block, although 12 years ago or a bit more, is the Occupational Qualifications sub-framework. So we're an integral part of the entire system. Our mandate, as you would already know, is to develop qualifications and part qualifications. And you'll see here we put in brackets, including trades and skills programs. Now, that has been a new introduction, not into the system, but into the QCTO. Skills programs previously, well, still to some extent reside under the SETAs, but we've now found a way of incorporating them into the framework. Previously, it was only qualifications that got onto the framework, not your skills. We have a way of doing that right now. And then obviously we have to advise the minister on all matters regarding policy on this. And the game changer that I'm going to talk to you about is something that has been approved by the minister. So it's law. We gotta go with that. All right. So we also believe that the QCTO is now positioning itself very well within the PSET sector. Anybody understands what the PSET sector talks about in this country at the moment? Everything that happens under the Higher Department of Education and Training. So at one workshop, I said, why don't you make our life simple and just change it to the Department for Post-School Education and Training? They laughed, but I think it's still serious. Because when you talk about higher education, you just think about universities. And the rest of us get left out. So if we're part of the PSET, call it PSET, and then we all feel that we're being treated equally, funding and otherwise. Sometimes I make some statements that gets me into trouble, but I hope there's no reporters in the room. All right, and then the gazetting of the OQSF. Okay, so before I talk to that slide, let me just quickly show you what the. This is a very complicated diagram, right? But that's the PSET sector in the country. That's what we're talking about. Now, you probably can't read it from there, but on the top row, starting off from the left-hand side is your public universities, then you got your TVET colleges, which are your public, and then your community colleges. Then the red block will be of interest to people in the room, and not necessarily that you won't be interested in the other parts, but that's where we have our private higher education institutions, our private colleges, and our private skills development providers. All right. On the left-hand side, you just have your SETAs. These are called the skills levy organizations. There's a group of them there. And then at the bottom row, you can see Quality Council for Trades and Occupations. One small little green block on the left-hand side. But we believe that we should be placed more towards the center of that diagram. We're getting there. And then you got the Council of Higher Education, Umalusi, Sakwa, etc. And on the right-hand side, you got, your NSFAS, National Health, NHSS, and the like. So I'm not going to spend too much of time in this, but just to show you that it's quite a complicated system, and that's a problem we have in this country, that we have too much of a complicated system, and we are also trying to simplify that. All right, so let me go back then to say that the other critical issue for us is obviously the gazetting of the OQSF, which I will speak to a lot more. And then some other initiatives that the QCTO is busy with. That's implementation of what we call Vision 2027. You may ask me what's that, and I got a few slides that will speak to that. Obviously, as we go along, we have to tweak our organogram because the environment is changing pretty fast. And we've got to be nimble and agile as an organization. And then we got to develop an MIS that includes automation where possible so that we can have quicker turnaround times on our particular processes. Okay, I'll be through that one. QCTO's vision and mission has been very stable. Our vision is obviously, and I'm sure it resonates with all of you in the room, we want to qualify a skilled and capable workforce. Our mission to manage the occupational sub-framework as per our legislative requirement. And then we want to quality assure national occupational qualifications for all who want to trade or occupation and where appropriate professions. Does that last statement sound familiar to anybody? Means you haven't read the Constitution of South Africa well. All right, that's the light side of things. But that comes exactly from the Constitution of South Africa, the right to education. And it goes forward also to talk about trades, occupations, and where appropriate professions. So we've built that into our mandate. All right, these are our values. Hopefully, I'm not going to go through each one of them, but hopefully we can stick to them. Sometimes, these values, you fall off the track, but we try to keep that as our guiding principles. In terms of the QCTO, this is our governance structure. We have a council that's appointed by the minister. Council is constituency based, so we have business, we have labor, we have community, a wide range of constituency based appointments by the minister. Obviously, we have to have an audit and risk committee, and then we've got two committees in our core operations, which is please forgive us, we just like the rest of South Africans with our acronyms. I was a bit more confusing. You can see the Q just goes in a different place and it changes the whole thing. We like to play on the word Q, by the way, Quality Council. So we got a qualifications, assessment, and certification committee. So that one just looks after the qualifications, the assessment, and the certification. And you can see that trajectory that goes under that committee. And then the other is the quality assurance of occupational qualifications. And there we look at what supports this. So it's your accreditation of providers, it's your ongoing monitoring of providers, it's the QA bits, it's the provisioning. And dare I say that in the previous dispensation, that was sorely lacking in our system, the issue of actually seeing what's happening in the classroom. Our classroom still in schools remains a black box. In training, it was also that. CETAs accredited your learning programs and off you went. And the next time anybody heard from you is when you were uploading your learners onto the NLRD what happened between that point and that point is anybody's guess. And I don't want to paint everybody with the same brush, by the way. So we have a system of ongoing monitoring because we believe learners need to get value for money. Employers who place the learners in your training facilities need to ensure that they're getting the best value or the best service. So, yeah. And then we got the ITSC. That's a fairly new committee because QCTO has grown to such an extent, and with all things becoming digital and IT, there was a necessity for that. So we're a properly governed structure. Our internal management structure, we have the office of the CEO. There is a director in my office. Obviously, we have a governance unit. We got a CFO, and then we got 4 functional units: administration, that's looks after our core business side, which is HR and administration, and then the 2 committees I refer to linked to the unit number 2 and number 3. And then we got a fledgling research unit, which is already doing quite sterling work in terms of research outputs. One of the focus areas of research for the QCTO now is how do we forecast skills training needs. We don't believe that the tools currently being used in the country are totally usable. They are always backward looking. We determine what's our shortages by what's the gaps in the market. But I think with the way technology is going, we have to see what's required 3 years down the line and start to develop and train so that when that does hit us, we are ready to offer it. So a lot of work, and that's a game changer in itself that we have. All right, we respond to a number of legislative mandates and other national imperatives. I'll just go through this very quickly. So we have to operate in terms of the National Qualifications Framework Act, although we are established in terms of the Skills Development Act. Now, the NQF is a very important piece of legislation for the QCTO because it sets us up as a quality council, which means by virtue of that, we have responsibility for this framework. Means we've got to set policy for this framework. We've got to ensure that that policy is applied. And then we've got to report on the quality assurance that's happening in the framework at a very broad policy level, similar to the other quality councils. And then obviously, this has been happening with SAQA. Gradually, it's moving over to QCTO. That learner enrollments to the LLRD, which SAQA maintains, has got to be maintained by or be conducted by the QCTO. All right. So we know that you're still offering legacy or historically registered qualifications. Those are still being uploaded to SAQA by the seaters, but they go via us to the seaters. But where we have already implemented our new occupational qualifications, those go directly from the QCTO to SAQA. So in the next year, and I think I can safely say a year, all uploads will be going from the QCTO directly to the NLRD, except for where there are still learners in the system on the old legacy qualifications. Okay, and then we got to inform the public, which I am doing today. So I can tick off one deliverable. I've informed some parts of the public. All right, our Skills Development Act is very more pointed, and I'm sure all of you know this part of it, that in terms of the Act, we have to establish and maintain occupational standards and qualifications. Now, you know, for a long time as QCTO, we've been grappling with this, and ever since I joined the QCTO, I have been hammering on this point, and I think we are now getting it right. If you look at that, it says maintain occupational standards and qualifications. We've been focusing on qualifications. You got to first figure out what's the standard that underpins that industry before you develop the qualification. So a very good example that I could use, I mean, I'm not familiar with all the areas that we have to work with. If you look at welding, there are international welding codes. So we've taken all the welding codes, put them together, developed a qualification around it. Net result is South Africa has a world-class welding qualification. It meets all the international codes. Means anybody in South Africa now can go anywhere with that welding qualification. few years ago, we were importing welders, remember? Now we can boast that we can send ours anywhere else. Unfortunately, the system has not grabbed onto it yet. We're not turning out as many welders as we would like to. Okay, we still have some sectors that are bringing in people from outside. That's just one example. Now, I don't know where your industry is, but certainly there are standards that regulate that. If you want to be a chartered accountant, there are certain standards before you do that. And we need to look at those and build them into the qualification. So that is also another huge change. And at QCTO, I may add it here, it's going to come up somewhere else. We say we develop qualifications, part qualification skills programs by industry for industry. You are involved in every bit of the process. Maybe not you directly, but some part of your industry. Because it's no use us developing qualifications and then industry comes to us and says, but no, this doesn't work for us. Then we've all wasted our time, all right, and the time of the learner. So yeah, this issue of standards is becoming very critical. We have to do the quality assurance of the standards and qualifications leading in and for the workplace. Now, that is another big issue, in and for the workplace. At the moment, the workplace component rests with the CETAs. But at some point, it's got to move back into the QCTO. But we have an agreement with the CETAs now on how this is happening. And I think the in and for the workplace throws in a different angle. And I think that this will resonate with a lot of you, that you may be doing training on work sites. There's a company, they've got workers there, and the program that you're offering, you go and offer it on site. All right. So we got to kind of get the balance between the two. And let me also just indicate here that QCTO does not only accredit institutions of learning. We accredit industry as well. So one of the best examples, not me, just the best example. One of the good examples we have is Mercedes-Benz down in East London. They have a fantastic training center, fully equipped, where the vehicles are actually being manufactured. And we've accredited them. And they train some 350 candidates over a 3-year period. Obviously, they don't employ all of them, but all of them come out trained. They're a fully accredited training facility by the QCTO. So we look at both workspaces, as long as the learner is getting the full cohort of full qualification delivery. It could be by arrangement, or it could be the institution itself that's offering that. Designing and developing the standards and qualifications, submitting them to SAQA for registration. Unfortunately, that's a legal requirement. Everything still has to go to SAQA. I would be dishonest if I said everything is smooth in that regard. It is not smooth in that regard. Some of the things we put in the OQSF still needs to get carried through to SAQA. So, but there is a conversation happening that we need to move this system along. Especially if we look at the problems we faced, unemployment, we need to get people out into employment as soon as possible. We can't stick to 3-year qualifications. We got to create, pathways. So that's what we're also looking at. And then we got to ensure the quality assurance, and that's where Mr. Mbue's part comes in. How do we ensure that quality assurance? All right. So I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. Don't worry about this slide. I'll talk to it a bit more, but just, you can see in red in the bottom there, we're talking about a skills development ecosystem. And we have to start to develop and think about these ecosystems, because working as islands is not working any longer. Everybody is doing something that fits into somebody from somewhere else. And the quicker we understand these ecosystems, what's the roles, what's the responsibilities, where's the boundaries, and how does it impact, I think we're going to get a better system in place. All right, so I said I'll skip that slide because this is what I wanted to talk to. You'll know that we have the National Development Plan 2030, sets a whole lot of targets for us. We just picked up a few highlights. It talks about we need 30,000 artisans by the year 2030. Okay, we're already producing around 20 to 21,000 artisans. That's where we are. But for me, numbers do not tick the box. What's the quality of these artisans that are coming through? And we know that some are still going on the old trades, some are going on the new trades. So that's an issue that we're trying to deal with. So pushing numbers for me is just not about it. Then we got the medium-term strategic framework. It's a government document, comes to an end in next year. There's different priorities. We focus on priority 3 there. And the emphasis in that priority is very heavy on the PSET sector, and in particular on TVET colleges. Our public TVET colleges as well as our private colleges. How do we get them up to speed? What kind of initiatives do we need to put in there? And we have been working closely to actually get TVET colleges revived, as well as community education and training colleges. And then this document, if you haven't read this document, then please go and find it and read it. The white paper on post-school education and training. How many of you have read that document? Nobody. Please access that document and read it, because it's dated 2013. But the plan to implement that was only published in 2021. But QCTO has been keeping its eye on the plan, and we can say we can tick off at least 50 to 60% of what the white paper is asking us to do, or was asking us to do. But please read that paper. It's what has shaped the whole PSET sector. It's a white paper on post-school education. It was the first time the term PSET started to evolve. So I think it'll be good for you to read that. So in that, it talks about expanded access to the PSET system, and you sitting here are part of the PSET system now. I hope I got that point across. You're not just isolated, you're part of the PSET system. Obviously, it's about quality provisioning, renewed focus on TVETs and CETs, PSET system that is responsive to the needs of the individual citizens, employers. I think that's critical for you. In both public and private sectors, as well as broader societal and developmental objectives. Okay, it's a very broad statement, but you find your area in that. Then we had the National Skills Development Plan, and I'm sure all of you ought to have read that one, because that one replaced the previous NSD 3 and your NSD 2. And I know in the business environment, that was like the Bible. Okay, so the NSDP replaces those documents. For us as the QCTO, it was how do we streamline the quality assurance functions between the SETAs and the Quality Council? Sorry. So that's the important part for us there. Quality assurance conducted by SETAs and NAM to be integrated into the QCTO. The word was integrated, and there was different understanding of what integrated means. And at some stage it was, SETAs are going to be wiped out and they're all going to become part of QCTO. Okay, never going to happen. All right. Where the NAM comes to us, that I hope it's going to happen. And it should happen soon. But you'll see the issue with SETAs, why I made that statement just now. Funding allocation to QCTO to adequately resource us obviously needs to be attended to. All right, and then we got the department strategic plan. You can see it's kind of resonating about the PSET sector, etc., and I'm not going to go through it. And then during COVID, the minister launched the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. That was to try to pull the country out of a crisis. And emanating from that, there was the ERRSS, which is the Departmental Skills Strategy. QCTO is one of the early adopters of the skills strategy. And even right now, it's the lens through which we develop qualifications. If this is what the country says it needs for economic reconstruction and recovery, then our priority is there, but not only there. But it's a lens that helps us to focus on that. All right, and that's the document I'm talking about there, and I'm not going to talk about it too much. These are all documents you can access, on just Google it and you're going to get it. There are a number of dimensions in that plan, and QCTO features quite significantly in the skills strategy released by the department. All right, and obviously QCTO, we've got an action plan which we developed, which is approved by council, and we are being measured by our council against the progress in terms of that. All right, and then I spoke about the white paper in 2013, and then in 2021 there's a plan that talks about it's called the National Plan for Post-School Education and Training, but it's just setting out the plan for implementing the white paper. So you will just find whichever entity what they need to do. One of the big issues that came out of this plan was said that every quality council now needs to go and rework its qualification sub-framework. And we had just beat them to the draw before this was published, all right, because we saw it coming from the white paper already. So QCTO colleagues, you want to work with us and align with us, you're in a pretty safe space. Okay, the next couple of months are going to be bumpy, but I think we're in a safe space. All right, it speaks about, it's a roadmap for the implementation of the white paper, and it sets out the goals, objectives, outcomes, etc. By the way, the presentation will be made available from the organizer, so you don't have to worry about that. And there's a committee now that has been set up to actually look at integrated system planning. Now, coming closer home to the QCTO, we have 3 outcomes that guide our work in terms of our strategic planning. Number 1 is to maintain a single national quality assured occupational qualification sub-framework that promotes synergy, simplification, and effectiveness. That's our aim. Synergy, simplification, and effectiveness. It may still seem like it's complex, but as it rolls out, you will see the simplicity coming through it. Secondly, that whole slide I showed you, the colorful slide with all of those documents, we want to ensure that the development and quality assurance of occupational qualifications, part qualification, and skills programs respond to those developmental imperatives. And linked to that will be whatever the industry needs will be. And then obviously we need to create an organization that is a responsive learning organization. Everything's changing around us. I mean, you go to bed at night and you get up next morning and there's some other development. Chat GPT or whatever you call it, you know. So developments are happening pretty fast in industry, hydrogen economy, green economy, blue economy, and the next morning you get up and somebody else is talking about something else. And QCTO's got to keep up to speed with all of that. So we have to be a very, very agile organization. All right. This just clears or explains in further detail those 3 key points that I spoke about, so you can read that. So what was Vision 2027 about very quickly? Vision 2027 positions the QCTO again as an agile, responsive organization to respond to the needs of the just energy transition, green economy, hydrogen economy, etc., towards the establishment of a developmental state. So it's just a vision that helps us to guide our work. But more importantly, it seeks to achieve 2 goals. Number 1, we needed to close out Vision 2020. Now, how many of you sitting here have heard of Vision 2020 from the QCTO? All right, you haven't. I think I saw one hand. Okay. So Vision 2020 had this view a few years ago that everything from the QCTO, or from the CETAs, all of the functions are now going to come to the QCTO. So there was a vision set on how we're going to achieve that. Right? Having a vision is one thing. Funding it is the other thing. And it never got funded in the manner that it should be. Also, at that point in 2020, CETAs, their licenses were about to expire. Remember, they are licensed by the minister. So there was a bit of a limbo. So your license not expired, QCTO is established, everything's moving there. So hence Vision 2020, everybody's mindset was that, whoa, this is what is happening. Here we are, 2023, that has never happened. We had to get rid of that mindset because CETA licenses were were renewed, for 10 years. And in terms of the NDP, it's almost kind of, they'll be here forever. But QCTO is also here. So what's the function of the CETA now and what's the function of the QCTO? So Vision 2027 starts to clarify that part of it. All right. And then secondly, and I'm not going to read this, I kind of emphasize the NQF Act. It is the superseding act. It even has superseding powers over the Skills Development Act. So QCTO has got to ensure that it answers to the questions raised by the NQF Act. Closing out of Vision 2020, as I said, the funding was not approved. We are only able to meet the 3rd milestone that we had set, which was transition to QCTO supervision. So it culminated in 2019, after very protracted discussions with the department, with the CETAs, and with the QCTO, that we will enter into service level agreements. So there are service level agreements currently in place between the QCTO and the CETAs as to what they do and what we do. All right. And then they were also requested to ensure that they have a line item for quality assurance. Now, they still get the bulk of the funding. QCTO still only gets 0.5% of the CETA levy grant, which is 0.5% of the administration fund, or the 10% of the CETA, whatever they get. If I tell you the amount of money we get, you will cry. But maybe I should tell you, then maybe you'll find a way of giving us some money. Okay, the model we're following is a simple input, process, output, outcome. Let me not go into that. Let me just get into the nitty-gritty of it. So let's take accreditation of providers. Previously, you went to the CETA, you got accredited, they asked you for your learning material, you gave them your learning material, they approved your learning material, you were accredited, off you went, and continued your business. Two things were supposed to happen, and they did not happen the way they're supposed to happen. Number one, as soon as you enroll learners, you're supposed to upload those learners to the NLRD. We know, people sitting in the room here never did that. Okay? So there was no way of knowing what was happening in the system. And then the only time you knew it was when your learners completed their portfolio of evidence and submitting it now to get certification, and then somebody finds out, the system was active. But nobody knows what happened in that time. And we're still sitting with that problem today, by the way. We still get calls now that a group of learners finished in 2018. I think that was the last one we got, Mr. Mbue. 2018, and waiting for their certificates. Now we have to write to SAQA to say, SAQA, please open the window so that these learners can get their certificates. Huge issue. In terms of the Act now, QCTO must accredit providers. So, you will apply in the first place to QCTO to be accredited for the qualification. We have the first phase, which we call the desktop evaluation. Then the process then goes to the CETA, where they would do the verification. Because remember, CETAs have the close proximity to industry by virtue of their chambers. They would be easy to get the experts. QCTO cannot have experts in every field out to do this. So they will go and do a particular piece of work, and they will report to us in a particular manner, based on which QCTO will then award the accreditation. But look at the third block. QCTO audits the CETA processes and sample of recommendations. So what we're busy with right now is, and I know a lot of you here will be sitting with this problem, that CETAs have, if you look at the accreditation policies across 21 CETAs, there are probably 21 different policies. And makes it difficult if you want to interact with all those CETAs. Now, going forward from 2024, you're not going to interact with all of the CETAs, you're interacting with one body called the QCTO. So we're working with the CETAs now to get one policy. QCTO's already got its policy. That's going to simplify matters already. Okay. Now, when we say we audit the process, which means if we have the one standard policy, when we go and check that they accredited you, we're checking that they accredited you against that policy. And how do we do that? One, we can just go and check what they've done. But QCT also has, and we've created an ongoing application process of subject matter experts. So even any of you in the room, you're a subject matter expert, you want to become part of the QCTO, you put your application in on our SME portal. At some stage, you'll be called in for an interview. If you make the cut, you go onto our SME database. All right? So let's assume a CETA accredited 10 providers for a particular qualification. We go to our SME portal, we pull you out. At that stage, we take your other hat out, we put our QCTO hat on for you, and we send you to that place to go and see, is this place up to standard? If we do 3 and 4 out of 10, we got 40%. There's no scientific way of doing this. But if 4 is right out of 10, then maybe the other 6 are right. Now, unfortunately, that's the way to do it because of the limited budget. We call it risk-based quality assurance. The more money I get, the bigger the number I'll be able to visit. But can you see the subtle shifts that we're talking about now when we talk about this whole thing? So I use accreditation example. It's a simple one. The same thing would apply with qualifications, with quality assurance, with the assessments. It's the same, similar kind of process. Assessments are a bit more rigorous, though, because there's a national assessment. All right? Let me now that I clarified that part, I think I can see people are smiling a little bit. I think I can move a bit faster. All right, simplification of the QCTO's operating model. So in terms of the SLA, activities that contribute to quality assurance are devolved to the quality partners, meaning the SETAs. The activity, remember that second block I showed you? That's the activity. But the QCTO remains accountable for the quality assurance. That means if something went wrong there, we're still responsible. Okay? The issue of the monitoring processes that I spoke about was also to ensure that once that provider is accredited, the standards against which they are accredited are maintained throughout the process. That means when we accredited you, if you said you had Mr. X and Miss Y lecturing, when we come to do our monitoring, we still want to find Mr. X and Miss Y. We know that there are people who are just putting names on CVs, get their accreditation, and when you go back 1 week later, there's a completely unqualified person teaching. I was on TV the other day, if you didn't see, being interviewed by the Devi show. Yeah, around the very same issue. And that provider had the audacity to tell the students, pull out page number 1 from your portfolio of evidence and insert this one, which was signed by a qualified person who never put their foot in that institution at all. So, yeah, it's not a very easy area to be working with. And quality assurance is not easy. All right, I think I've spoken about the SETAs and their experience. So, QCTO standard setting model very quickly. We develop and review occupational qualifications. Standards are set in the qualifications, the part qualification of the skills programs. That's the first point. That's where the standard is set. Because in that is what the learner should be able to do when they come out with the certificate. Second place, the standard for QCTO is in the provisioning, which I spoke about, which is the accreditation and the ongoing monitoring. The third place is in the assessment, the final integrated summative assessment. Now, here's a big shift from portfolio of evidence to an external integrated summative assessment. The white paper asks for a national assessment. Now, please don't think matric exams. We can't go that route in this sector. But there has to be a standard that we set, which is a nationally agreed standard, that no matter what the test is and where the test is administered, the competences that the learner would have to display would be the same. Is that point home? What we have done in the interim is for the historically registered or the legacy qualifications, which was mainly on your POE, which, by the way, is as subjective as the number of assessors that there are. The added problem, I'm going to nail it home. The added problem with that was you had assessors and moderators in the system, or we still have them. Moderators pitch up long after the assessment's been completed. What are you moderating? You're just looking whether the assessor ticked the right columns and the right in that page in the file. That's all. And we found some SETAs where the moderators were not even subject matter experts. We were generalists. How do you moderate if you're not a subject matter expert? So these are the challenges in the system, colleagues. So we got a final integrated assessment where there is the current historical qualifications, which will still continue up to 2024. We have just implemented what we call the FISA together with the portfolio. It's just to check the knowledge, etc. that's attached to that. And then the certification. And by the way, certification in QCTO is not an end process where we just press a button. No learner will get certificated unless A, B, and C is ticked off. That's how our system is designed. All right. All right, this is just our operation model, stronger relationships, strengthen, expand TVET systems. I've spoken about this in some detail. All right, I want you to watch this. We did this at our launch. It's only about 6 minutes. It's going to tell you the whole story about the game changer, and then I'll just touch on a few things after that, and I'll be done. All right, let me just skip all of this. I think we've covered all of that. Now, I think I may have to focus on this. This was the previous OQSF. And you can see that on the right-hand side in the red column, we had occupational certificates all the way from levels 1 to 8. All right, which was the problem in itself. What does an occupational certificate on level 7 mean for a student who's now looking to go into, articulate into higher education? Or even in industry itself, what did a certificate at level 7 or whatever level, what did it mean? And those are some of the challenges that we're grappling with. And you know, high on the agenda of the country is the issue of articulation, RPL, and those kind of things. So that was what we were with, and so this is the revised OQSF, and now if you look at that, you can see that the red column, which is the OQSF that I've been talking about, we have, or we share nomenclature with the different levels. So if we can start off at level 1, where you see there's just a general certificate, we now have a general occupational certificate. And the word occupational has just been inserted throughout, right through to level 8. But the important thing is just not inserting the word or occupational there. It is an occupational qualification. And if we look at level 5, 6, 7, and 8, it has to meet the requirements of a higher certificate or a diploma. So we do currently have qualifications at level 7 and 8. We can't just start calling them diplomas. They have to go back to the drawing board so that whatever the requirements of a diploma are built into it. All right? So that learners can start to articulate. More than that, this framework that we've put together is to, as you would have seen in the slide, to allow for articulation not only between the OQSF and to higher education. We also created a downward stream. A lot of learners go to university and would finish 2 years and could not finish the 3rd year for some reason. It could be financial, it could be personal, it could be whatever. They currently walk away from university and nothing to show for it. It's a huge disaster. We are saying that they can come back onto the OQSF with whatever they've got in the 2 years. We will do an evaluation of what they have, do a gap analysis, see where they lie on our framework, put them through the integrated summative assessment, and issue them with a certificate. Nobody's lost in the system. No dead ends. So while it's there for those who have ability and would start, it's also there to serve another purpose. I see people looking at their clock, so let me rush. You can see that the other issues of why we got that OQSF, and by the way, there's a lot more I can talk about that. We want to promote, as we said, the national coordinated NQF. This issue of parity of esteem is a big issue in the country. And we know that our youngsters and the way society is, they want a diploma or they want a degree. And that is why, you know, the TVET college space or the trade space is not very attractive to them. We want to make it attractive. The only way, I mean, with now mandate is by putting an appropriate qualification type in it. But obviously the rest of, you know, society needs to come on board to recognize the value of this. And hopefully even remuneration starts to be improved because you identify what capacities, you know, come out of this. So the point I want to make is that prior to this, all our trades, the 125 registered trades in this country, you could not find them on the NQF. They were just registered on the side. You were a tradesman. Now, with the QCTO developing them to occupational qualification, a plumber can walk around and say, I have an NQF level 4 qualification. A millwright, which is obviously demands much more than a plumber, is walking around with a level 5 qualification. But at the moment, he's saying, I got a level 5 higher certificate. The old nomenclature? Occupational certificate. Now, once we transform that, he's going to say he's walking around with a higher occupational certificate. We also have qualifications at level 7. And if we do it right, and then put those learners through again, they will be saying, I have a diploma in this area. Can you see what we try doing here? Okay, we want to elevate this particular area. The third one is we want to make TVET colleges institutions of choice. Now, you must have heard the minister use this as a buzzword a number of times, making TVET colleges institutions of choice. Why TVET colleges? In our system, we're getting 600,000 to 700,000 matriculants a year. Of that, a large number qualify to go to university. Let's not talk about the standard of the matric and all of that. That's for another day. But a large number of them qualify to go to university. But the reality is universities can only accommodate up to 250,000. What happens to the rest? They go off somewhere. Some of them go into TVET colleges, but by the way, what TVET colleges are currently offering takes them down 2 levels if they go to the NCV. And if they go to the N4 to N6, and I hope there's no providers here offering N4 to N6, because the N4 to N6, even when they get that, and that's not a qualification, by the way, when they get to industry, industry says that you know nothing. So those are the issues. So TVET College is institution of choice. We got the framework. It's now how do we build the institution? And when we talk about the institution, we talk about resource capacity, including human resource capacity. And that's going to be a huge step, but we believe it's a step in the right direction. There are TVET colleges at the moment who have partnerships with higher education institutions. But we say, why should this be specific arrangements between one institution and another? That means if you're located in that particular area, then you're okay. We're trying to make things systematic. By the way, on the old framework, even in RPL, there's institution to institution articulation happening. We said, why should it only benefit those where a particular institution benefits another one? We have to get things to be more systemic, built into the system. It must happen automatically for any learner, all right? And then we want to promote the articulation, and I've spoke about that. And this was our big one. Higher education institutions offering OQSF qualifications. By the way, we've accredited about about four higher education institutions are already accredited. Travesty of justice in the country is taking our previous technicons and making them universities of technologies. They've lost that whole element of being a technicon. I made a presentation at UJ the other day, and I told them UJ was the merger of the previous Rand Afrikaans University and the Wits Technikon. He said, show me where's Wits Technikon still in UJ. And they couldn't answer. And the model of the Technikon was that you would spend 2 years theory, 1 year practical. You know how many students we got sitting in the NEET group that have 2 years of training at an institution but can't get their 1 year practical to get qualified? And we still say we have a skill shortage in the country? If we can fix that problem up, we fixed half our problem up. That is why in the QCTO you would see that we brought the workplace right into the qualification. We shifted the burden from the learner to the system. All right, let me keep to my presentation. Otherwise, I'm going to go off on tangent. All right, so I thought, okay. You didn't bring that slide. Okay, I thought the banner. That's fine. So this is, exactly what we presented in the previous one. Now, we built in a couple of things in here. And this is the real game changer that I'm talking about. That what we've done as a QCTO, we have adopted a model of stacking of qualifications. 1 minute. Oh. Sound. Oh, sorry. We developed a model of stacking the qualifications, which means somebody does not have to spend 3 years in an institution. You could spend 1 year and get your general occupational certificate. And then the way that is constructed, you can either go out into meaningful employment, or you can decide I want to go further education, and then you jump onto level 2. Immediately, or at any other time that you desire. And you can keep climbing the ladder in that way. So if you're a student that wants to get let's assume we got a qualification at level 4. You're starting off at level 1. And then you can go level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, and you get your qualification. But we are saying that built into every qualification, there should be exit points at levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Might be a bit of a difficult one to to kind of take in at the moment. That was the whole idea of the NQF in the first place, by the way. Universities, when you go in your first year, you're supposed to, after first year, get a certificate, high certificate. After second year, you're supposed to get a diploma. After third year, you're supposed to get a degree. We forgot about that. You're going to get stuck there for 3 years, degree or nothing. We fix that up in here. So if we say, like, Emmanuel, help me with one simple qualification that we have at level 4. Let's assume you got a tradesman at level 4 who's an electrician. At level 1, a general occupational certificate, what should a person who's in the electrical field be able to do at level 1? Obviously, they can't be connecting the wires, right? But at that level 1, they'll be probably able to design, chase the walls, insert the conduits, know where the conduits go, and do all of that. At level 2, they may be able to do something else. Maybe it's at level 3 that you need the person that can connect all of the wires to the light fittings and to the distribution board or whatever the case might be. Just a simple example. Now, somebody who does not have the ability to get to level 4, but can get meaningful employment at level 1. And if they got the aptitude then, and at some stage they realize I want to do that. By the way, you know what we're doing? We're creating a relic, we're trying to remove something that happened in the past. In the past, previous people of color could not become artisans. All they could become was artisan hands. That means you carried the toolbox, but you knew the job. Can I tell you the first lot of certificates QCTO issued was RPL to those candidates who were carrying toolboxes for a long time? They came to us, they proved their competence through an RPL process, they wrote the trade test, and they awarded the trade certificates. So we kind of trying to fix up everything in this, and we believe that we have the right vehicle. Now, what fits into this is part qualifications, skills programs, and micro-credentials. All right? Let me just use an example. If somebody is already qualified as an electrician, now we're talking about the green economy. What is it that we need to train this electrician on so that they understand what do we talk about making things energy efficient? Do we need to go and create another whole qualification? No. So we just create a part qualification or a skills program. Somebody who's already an electrician gets to a provider, gets trained, they get a certificate that says, I've been trained in this, and now they're an electrician, plus they others. Huge issue we're having with solar at the moment. How many of you put solar panels? What certificate of competency did you, certificate of compliance did you get? It's an electrical one, it's not a solar one. It's an electrical contractor who installed a solar. Two totally different things. You understand? All right, but just on the last day of May, our solar installer, solar mounter, solar technician qualifications were approved. Now we've got the qualifications to train the people to say, now these are genuine. This is not an electrician jumping on your roof who does not know what your roof was made up of and how to install it on your roof. He's just installing it. Connecting it up, it's working, we're all happy. I don't know what's going to happen if there's an insurance claim somewhere along the line. I'm being truthful, colleagues. Truthful. Now, if you've got a qualified installer, a qualified mounter, and a qualified technician who connects it up, but now we still got one more leg to go to the Department of Labor to say, where's the regulations for this, whatever it might be. So that's a system we're building in. Then you might have heard this thing called micro-credentials. Everybody's talking about micro-credentials across the world. We got it subsumed, it's hidden, but we said, let's not complicate the system. All right, so micro-credentials are in. But let's look at what happens on the right-hand side. It's what I've been harping on the whole morning through. May lead to articulation to other sub-frameworks, employment, self-employment, or further education. At any stage. You exit and you come in. All right? By the way, we have standalone skills programs and part qualifications at those levels as well. All right. Let me give you a good example that just happened in the TVET colleges. Hairdressing. There was always a hairdressing qualification. But obviously, you go into any of the townships, you'll see hairdressing happening all over the place, right? But are they trained? Not necessarily. What do we want to do? We want to ensure that they have the skill. So they took the whole hairdressing qualification and demarcated it into 5 skills programs. So you got Afro hairstyling, you got Caucasian, you got styling, you got this. You can now go and get those learners out and say, come, let's just see what's your skills, what's the gaps, what do we need to train you on? You get a skills program saying Afro. That means that's the area you can go work in. You then decide you want to move into the rural area, into an urban area, but you want to still practice your trade. You do the skills program on Caucasian or whatever the case might be. You get 5 skills programs, you got the full qualification, but you're not going to get the qualification until you write the ISA to test your abilities across all the 5 parts. That's where the trick lies. Okay, so I can see some people agreeing with me. Promoting access to that. All right, my time is almost up. Just this, maybe this is the last slide, and then I'll fly through the other one because I think it's an important part. So what we've done in some of our qualifications, and remember I said some of our qualifications because industry will determine this. Because of the lack of workplaces in our country, we had to kind of say, how do we minimize the amount of time required in the workplace? So we brought this area of practicals and the work experience together. We call it application. And we're saying how much of this can be done through simulated work experiences, etc. And now there are good examples. You can produce a better welder using a simulator than having them in the workshop. Did you know that? Because the simulator actually helps you to correct your hand angle and your hand movement. So instead of being in the workshop, you spend 80% of your time at a simulator, which is much more, well, expensive to get, but much more cost effective in terms of material. And you spend 20% of your time in the actual workshop to prove that what you learned in the simulator you are able to do. And it's working across the world. All right, I was in Germany 2 weeks ago, and I was taught using virtual reality how to remove a filter from a solar heater. And I looked mad wearing that goggles and walking around. There's nothing in front of me, but I was opening screws and removing parts and whatnot. And that's the way things are going. I was taught how to take out the filter and how to put in a filter. Now, if you put the real thing in front of me, I guarantee you I can do it. I'll know exactly what to move, where, which pipe to remove, where to put the bucket to collect the water that's going to run out, etc., etc., etc. Colleagues, that's the way the system is moving, and we've got to keep going with it. All right, I think I covered those parts. All right, in terms of the ministerial determination, and this is where you may be all sitting now and wondering what's happening, all of the historically registered qualifications expire on the end of June. That's next week. Okay. The only leeway we have is that you can continue to enroll them until 2024. Okay? After 2024, you cannot enroll any learners in these programs. There will be only those in the teach-out period, which means by then they have to be in the new occupational qualifications or part qualifications or skills programs. Now, if you are sitting and you're offering a skills program and you can't find the replacement for it on the OQSF, please go and knock on the door of your CETA as loud as possible. Because that's our port of... We've been asking CETAs for years. Our first call, I had a discussion with somebody, was to say, tell us which of your skills programs have no enrollments in the past 3 years. If they do not have any enrollments, it means it's useless. We're taking it off. It was deaccredited. If you've got learners in it, it means it's active. Come, let's talk, let's develop. Some have come, some have not come. Now we know there's going to be a huge gate crash coming in the next year. But we're ready for it. But just to indicate to you that we have almost 700 qualifications developed already with a 30% uptake. And again, as much as I alluded to the CETAs not playing their game, let me be quite frank. Providers have not played the game either. Because it means you're going to have to go and re-engineer yourself. You have been doing this thing all the time against the old. Now you have to do something against the new. It means you need new learning material. You need a new kind of thinking. You may need whatever. So providers also sat back and waited for the last minute. And I think that's natural human tendency. And yeah, it's like your gun license or your driver's license. So unfortunately, that's where we are. Unless by some miracle the minister extends this thing, and which I pray for every night that it must not happen. Because it's been happening for the past, I don't know how many years, that these qualifications have just went on and on and on and on, and they are not as relevant as we think they should be. So that's the slide. All right, this is just to tell you what we're doing. So basically, this is our operational model. The quicker we get that black line to be vertical, we would have all accomplished our work. Okay. Colleagues, I'm not going to go through this, just talk about just a slide here that, this was a presentation I had to make again in Germany on sustainability in TVET. Now, that's becoming a big buzzword. And I want you to just take that away with you, that in whatever your space is, remember, this issue of sustainability has to come in. Just energy transitions, green economy, hydrogen economy. People just need to become aware of what's happening in the world around us in the environment. And if we don't take care of our, and South Africa is like really, electricity, water, health, you name it, we got the problems. So this area, and it has to be bringing the education and training sector together with the policy makers. And how do we build this into our curriculum? So even I don't know what, I know a lot of you would be doing, training at businesses in terms of health and safety, etc. But what's the issues of sustainability that now need to find its way into that? Even if it's simple firefighting, surely there's some elements of sustainability that come into these old programs that we've been talking about. How do you make a building more fire resistant rather than telling somebody how to put out a fire in the quickest time? When you hear the siren, you go down that stair, etc., etc. So we need to really start to talk about that. All right. You're going to get the slides. There's a number of things about research, curriculum integration. How do we actually get this whole issue of sustainability? It's a huge issue across the country. Hence, we were required to attend this conference in Germany on sustainability. By the way, and I'm going to stop with this one now. That red diagrams I showed you, we've just leapfrogged the most coordinated market economies in the world. For them to do anything on sustainability, like I said, how we can plug and play on that one, it's going to take them 3 years. That's how long it takes them to develop a qualification. We got the qualification, we identify what needs to be done on top, we add it on top. If it needs to go in sideways, we develop it and put it in sideways. If it needs to be a standalone, it's going to be a standalone. But we can answer these questions of just energy transition and things as quickly as. We are now developing as a QCTO qualifications in 3 months. Previously it took 3 years and a good couple of million rands. I hope there's no QDFs in the room. You're going to hate me because I got rid of you. I only use subject matter experts to develop qualifications. Who better? And it's working. So we all need to come to the party to get this thing done. Business, industry, education, the rest of us. That's just the process diagram. And by the way, if you find any fraud in any of the systems, please report it. We take it quite seriously. We've taken action. All right, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to hand over, or shall I just stand here and ask for questions, or you want to manage it?